Blessings on blessings, yeah.
All right, Mr. McCall. So as you see, Genesis chapter 10, what I'm gonna do this time is I'm gonna read a good portion of this. And with each portion, I'm gonna have some PowerPoint stuff. The reason that I'm gonna have the PowerPoints is just so because a lot of times when you do this reading of it, you can get confused, right? So I made a little slideshow so that you can see who is the descendant of who. And as I was putting this together, it actually helped me out a lot to actually, get a better understanding and some clarity of like how many, who had children, who did not, and how many did so and so had and have and whatnot. Now, those of you who know, I'm going to butcher these names. I don't want to. I don't want to butcher the names, but it's just going to happen, and I don't want it to, but it's just it just be like that sometimes. So just bear with me, and let's enjoy this ride together. Don't be like Kiefer. Don't be like Kiefer, y'all. Be better than Kiefer, because Kiefer the type of ock, he just gonna laugh at me, and so if we can grow in this, let's all strive to be better than Kiefer. Let's strive to be better than Kiefer in this. Uh, Amazing. So now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were the sons born after the flood. To Japheth, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavin, and Tubal, Meshach, Tyrus, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Rephath, and Togarmah, and the sons of Yavin, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dondanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. All right. So let's do this. So before I move on, you see here I have highlighted yellow. These are the direct sons of Japheth. So we have Gomer, Yavin, but Magog, Madai, Tubal, and Meshach and Tyrus. It doesn't mention their sons here, but that's why I put them in this list like this with the yellow, so you can see that they are of Japheth, but it doesn't list their names in this genealogies list. So all right, so now that we went through the names, let's take a look at where they are located. So on this map, some people will call it the Middle East. Here we can see where Shem is located majorly, Ham is located majorly, and where Japheth is spread. And there's many maps to this, but I got a couple. We're gonna start off with this one here. So we can see, Magog, Gomer, Ashkenaz, Madai, Togarmah, and we have Kittim. We have Kittim here. Elisha, Dondadan, Tarshish made it all the way here and up and upward to good waves, right? Just so you can get a picture. I'm gonna keep coming back to this map as we keep going, but as just so you can get a picture of, an idea of where they are located. This is roughly where they are. Now, Ararat, now when we know that the ark sat in Ararat, and Ararat is located approximately right here. This is where Ararat is. So if you're seeing them come from, you're seeing, Japheth and their descendants, along also with Shem and Ham, they're coming from, they're venturing out from this location here. All right. So let's move it on right along. Let's talk about Ham. All right. Now, the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, Canaan, and the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Zabta, and Ramah, and Zeptica, and the sons of Ramah, Sheba, Dedan. I'm gonna skip it, but we're gonna come back to it, all right? Now, Mitz begat Ludim and Anamim and Leabim and Naphtu and Pethruzim and Caslu, out of whom came the Philistine and Captor. We have Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth. And Canaan begot Sidon, firstborn, his firstborn, and Heth and the Jebusites, and the Amorites and the Girgashites, and the Hivites and the Arkites, and the Sinites, and the Arvadites, and the Zemarites, and the Hamathites, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. And afterwards were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. And the border of the Canaanites was from, and thou comest to Gerar and unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. These are the sons of Ham after their families and after their tongues, in their countries, in their nations. All right. So we're going to bring up this map again. So here we see the locations here. So we see Canaan in this. We see Canaan, but see. So here's a point that I wanted to point out here. Right, we see that majority of the Hamites is like in the south, in the southwest region. Right, in the southwest region here. Right. So we see Lud in the far west, Casloon, on the coast. Leah put Naphtu here, Mizraim, and this is Mizraim. For those of you who don't know, Mizraim is Egypt, lower and upper Egypt. All right, Cush is where you get the name for the Ethiopians and whatnot as well. But you see all the way down Zepta, Havilah, and you see that Rama, Sheba, and Septa is over here in what you would call the Arab lands, right? So you see, like if you look at Shinar, Shinar is up here in the cities of up here by I would say it was be just the region, but they're far away from everybody else. You see, they're in the land of Shem as we can see here, right? And then you can also see I think this says Luda. I mean, yeah, Lud up here. Oh, huh. Okay. But yeah, you can see how everybody is a little mixed. We got the Hamathites up here as well, at the top. So you got the Hamathites up here, Kaftar here, and yeah. So you see everybody's a little mix and mingling a little bit, just a little bit. All right. So I'm gonna do I'm gonna do Shem real quick, and then I'm going to take some questions. All right. Unto Shem also the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Aphoxad, and Lud, and Aram, and the children of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. Aphoxad begat Salah, and Salah begot Eber. And unto Eber were born two sons, the name of one Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided. And his brother named Yonkton, and Yonkton begot Almadad, and Shalef, and Hazmar Veth, and Yerah, and Duram, and Uzal, and Diklah, and Obal, and Abmiel, and Sheba, and Aphir, and Havilah, and Yobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. Man, that's a man. Joktan was man. Whew, be fruitful and multiply, they say. Um, and their dwelling was from Mesha, and thou goest unto Sephar and Mount of the East. These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, and in their land, after their nations. All right. And the bottom, these are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations, in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Log out. Let's take a look at the map first, again, real quick. So we seeing Shem is over here in this location over here, right? But you see, they like I said, they mixing and mingling over here. And the cool thing about this, right? The cool thing about this, right? When I look at this, I see that if for those who know where Israel ended up, right? Where Israel ended up after 70 AD, a good portion of them when they fled down to this location down here in Yemen. And the Jews was there and they created an amazing civilization slash semi kingdom down here. So when you wonder like, why would they go down here? Well, this helps to give you a picture as to why, right? So with that being said, oh, let me look. Let's check out the next map right here. So here's another map for you all, just to expound on this a little bit more. As you can see, Tarshish here, descendants of Gomer and Yavin up here, Magog, Gomer, Ashkenaz along this line, Meshech. As I said before, Ararat is right, was right here. All right. We're kind of, as you can see, kind of scattered about a little bit, right? Misraim, Put, Ludim, Cush, Ethiopia. You see, but let's do one more, and we're going to return back to this. So here's a semi more so modern map of the location. So you see Damascus, Jordan, Philistines in this area. It said the Hittites were here, right? Now the Hittites, I studied the Hittites. It was an amazing study, but the Hittites continue because it was three great kingdoms, right? Three great empires, right? And it was the Hittites, Assyrian, Egyptians, and Babylonians, right? And every kingdom, for some part, will have an empire at some point in time. But the Hittites ended up in this region, taking half and sometimes all of Cyprus here, right? And they constantly battled with Assyria in this location here, right? So we see Gomer, Togarmah, Turkey location, Lud, Lydia, Yavin, Greece, Ashkenaz and the Scythian, all right, Asher, Assyrian, Madai, Medes, Elam, Persia, a Foxide around this area, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Joktan, Arabia, all right, and we see where poor Canaan is, all right. So with that being said, let's see. Do we have any questions? Any questions? All,
We got a question.
all right. There we go. All right.
All right. Hey,
Uh,
so as you were going through the genealogy, I noticed there's an omission of one of the sons of Noah. We really didn't go through the genealogy of Foot, and we generally think he's in Libya, but what other nations or areas today would we think would be his descendants, such as like maybe a Chad or something like that? I just don't know, but it's kind of weird to me that he kind of all the people that we read about in the Bible, we can trace them to the other three, but we don't know who came out of Foot. At least I don't. Maybe I missed it somewhere.
I'm in the same boat with you. Matter of fact, when I was checking this out, my findings were similar. Any other Akeem? Any comments?
Sorry about that, Ham. You're correct, but
Yeah.
we don't go through his lineage for some reason.
It didn't show anything. That's like a lot of them. So if I go back, a lot of them, if I go back to Ham, even if I was to go back to Japheth, a lot of it don't mention. So if you look at these like the sons of Gomer and Yavin, right? Now, but they spread it out and conquered their own land, not just or established themselves in another land, not just in the land of their father. So Foot probably established itself, yeah. So his descendants probably just established themselves within his land. And that's probably majority of the reason why. So if we was to look at him, like you got Magog, Madai, Tubal, and Meshach, right? I had the same question, like where are their descendants? Why doesn't it mention them? Their descendants, they didn't have any that occupied land. We did the genealogies in like chapter 5, right? We did the genealogies in chapter 5. They're only mentioned the ones that was worth mentioning, and then didn't really mention or name the others. And I think in this situation, it's the same thing in this particular situation. And I think that Foot didn't have no, because you see Canaan, you see where Canaan is, you see how Mitzrayim is, right? So maybe the descendants of Foot stayed in that land. Does that answer your question?
I mean, it's a educated guess, I guess I'd say. I just wonder because a lot of the other folks, and we see some of the names on here, and we know that Israel had some type of relationship, positive or negative, with their descendants, because we could see the names in here. And I just wonder if Foot was a nation that Israel really didn't have much dealings with one way or another. And I mean, we just never hear about their descendants, so we just won't know.
Hey, I guess we just won't know. Oh,
So,
maybe
so
oh, go ahead, Kiefer.
yeah, so when it comes to Ham, the most significant out of Ham was Cush, Mitzrayim, Canaan, and then Nimrod. So
Right.
you see the text focused on Nimrod. Foot was known as there is some, and don't quote me, there is some Egyptian text that speaks of an area called Punt, which they believe was Foot, but they were pretty much not servants, but they pretty much were under Mitzrayim. Now we know later on down the line that when you get to Carthage, Carthage was in that general area of Tunisia and Libya, in the area that was controlled by Foot. So that's when they become a little more significant when Carthage comes into fruition, around the time of latter Roman Empire. But there wasn't anything, you are correct in saying that there's not much mentioning about Foot here, because there is nothing to mention. So hopefully that helps.
All right. Aknanel, you got a comment for that? You got an answer for us all?
Hello. Can you hear me, Mr. Picard?
Yes, sir. Shalom.
All right. It's interesting that Kiefer brought that up about the Egyptian text. I'll just give it to you for the sake of time. Foot is H6316. And if you look at Ezekiel 27:10, and you also could look at Jeremiah. Well, go ahead to Jeremiah 46, verse 9. Okay. That's probably the clearest one. And in Jeremiah 46, verse 9, if you click on the Libyans, it's the same concordance number. And so there are quite a few precepts. Ezekiel 30, verse 5 also. It speaks of the Libyans or Libya as Foot. So it appears, according to scripture, the Libyans are descendants of Foot.
What's the Strong's number for it? Mine is acting crazy.
63:16.
Say it one more time, you broke up.
63:16.
16.
And so that Strong's number originates in verse 6 with Foot. But you see it also in Jeremiah 46:9, also in Ezekiel chapter 30, verse 5, as it pertains to the Libyans.
All right.
Hopefully that question, Aki.
Yeah, that was a blessing. That was a blessing right there. Here we go. We getting somewhere. I told you we learning stuff. Let's take a look at that Ezekiel 27 real quick. 27:10. All right. They of Persia.
27 speak
Huh?
to Foot alongside Persia and Lud, but Ezekiel 30 and 5 will probably be your clearest one, because it specifically talks about Libya. But if you click on that word Libya, you'll get Foot and his descendants. And so I said that it was interesting because Ezekiel 38 and 5 speaks of Ethiopia alongside the Libyans. And that's why I said it was interesting that Kiefer brought up the Egyptian text that speaks of a land called Foot.
Thank you very much.
All right. Oh,
Hello. My question, this has always bothered me. Genesis verse 10:20, Genesis 10:25, when it talks about Eber's two sons, Peleg and Joktan. What do they mean by Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided? Is this because I know sometimes the timing can be how they write the scriptures when they're saying divided, because at this point, everybody spoke the same language, everybody was together. So do you know what they mean by Peleg? Is this like after the Tower of Babel? Is that why they, because I don't understand why they mentioned that. They had to mention it for a reason, like for in his days the earth was divided.
All right. So Peleg means so this says a fox that begat Selah, Selah begat Eber, and Eber were born two sons, the name of one Peleg. For in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And I do not want to jump too far ahead, but I believe that's when he was present when that whole situation happened, because when the confusion of the language, let's take a look at it. I apologize for y'all. Sorry, and I didn't want to jump too far ahead, but let's take a look at the Tower of Babel, right? So when it says they confused it, so the confounded of the languages, right? It says, and Yah said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Let's go down, and there confound their languages, that they may not understand one another speech. And Yahuwah scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of the earth. So let's take a look at confounded, overflow, mix, fodder. But it's basically and taking the people who are one and united against Yah. When you scatter the nations, it's going to cause them to be divided. They'll be divided in speech, and that will be like the division, will be like the dividing of a land. Because when you divide a people, when you divide a language, they will all go to their own lands, and it'll be like dividing the land. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it
Oh,
makes sense.
shalom, Ak.
What I was looking at was verse. I mean, I was looking at a lot of verses, but what really stood out to me was in verse. Give me a second, I'm getting there. 4. It says, "And
Verse.
the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim." And you did a great job on the names.
Told I mean, I'll be
You know what I'm
trying.
saying?
I'll be trying.
You only messed up like 12. So anyway, no, I'm kidding. It said I focused on, or what was standing out to me was Tarshish. It's really all the names. And I was like, we got names, but what do the names mean? What does Hebraically their names mean? And I was looking at Tarshish, and no, I wasn't looking at Tarshish, but Tarshish is what got me thinking. So
Mhm.
I zoomed in basically on Tarshish, and I went to Ezekiel 27:12.
That's
And
why you went there. Okay, let's take a look at it real quick. 27:12. All right.
and it says, Tarshish, thy merchant, by reason of the multitude of all riches, with silver, iron, tin, and lead, they traded in thy fairs.
Mhm.
So I was thinking about Tarshish, looking at names. I put in names and I wanted to see what the scripture said. And when I put in Tarshish, Ezekiel came out. So I read that. And what stood out to me was merchant and fairs.
Mhm.
And so I looked at the word merchant, and it's H5503.
It's a car.
And I'm doing my best with this Hebrew, but you got a Samic, you got a Het, and you got a Resh.
Fresh. That's right.
And so what I thought of was thorns that surround what separates the leader. And then I looked at the word fairs. And the word fairs is H5801. Isabon, I don't know how you say that. But
I'm gonna say it like you.
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so you got an ayin, a zayin, a bet, a wa, and a noon. So what I got was knowing by experience the cutting away from the house that secures to the sun or air. And it got me thinking, these merchants, they weren't bartering, if you will, they were making currency and using their silver, using their iron, their tin, their lead, whatever, to trade because they were merchants. And the scripture that came to my mind was Deuteronomy 12:29-31, and several ones. Actually, don't go there. Go to Deuteronomy 7:25 because I don't want to be here all night. It's just something that stood out to me. 7:25 because that's a shorter scripture. It says, "Thy graven images of their Elohims or their deities shall ye burn with fire. Thou shalt not desire the silver or the gold on them, nor
Mhm.
take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein. For it's an abomination to Yah thy Elohim." And I was like, what? This is crazy, Most High. If my thinking is right, Tarshish brought in a different way. And we were like, "Whoa, I like that." But the Most High said, burn that mess. I mean, I got other scriptures, Joshua 7:1. Remember Achan?
Mhm.
And then he said, I took the accursed thing. What was that accursed thing? It was silver, gold, 50 shekels of weight. He coveted after them, but a goodly Babylonish garment. That's Joshua 7:21. And so it got me thinking, these nations,
Let me go back.
7:21. Yeah, I'll give you some time. I'll give you some time. So he says, when I saw among the spoils a goodly Babylonish garment, these are all Gentile things, gold and silver. And so it made me think of the entirety of Genesis 10. There is a separation. The Most High is like the when the Gentile nations were divided, then it goes to him, they were divided, but he gives us a little more detail when it comes to Shem. And so we see this separation, and it was like, it's not just a separation of tongue, it's a separation of what they do and how they live. That's all, Toda. That's one of the things that stood out to me.
Hallelujah. I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to go here. Next thing I wanted to try to talk about, the Gentiles and what are they, right? So, what are they? What are the Gentiles, right? So here we're going to use the law first mention. The law first mentioned when it comes to verse 5 here says, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided, right? So the law first mentioned, with the first time mentioned here, Gentiles, right? Gentiles, this is the first time this this word is seen, right? So it says it's the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nations, right? So we would say by these were the isles, right? So let's take a look at, first off, let's see what Gentiles, mean, right? Messing up my screen all crazy. So Gentiles here, Goy, a foreign nation, a Gentile, a troop of animals, a flight locust, Gentile, heathen, or non-believer, um, nation or people, right? So when we looked at the map, we saw, maybe I could bring it up real quick. You see the isles. It said that the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, right? So when we're thinking this, we would there are people that believe that Seth himself are the Gentiles, right? They'll say, law first mention says that they're Gentiles. Those are the Gentiles, or this would be the location that the Gentiles actually come from, right? But it says, but the one thing that jumped out to me is this word isles, right? It's funny, it's this I. Habitable spot, dry land, a coast, an island, right? So it's something special. If you know what's special about Japheth, right? What is special about the location of the descendants of Japheth, if you can name it? What's so special about his location? Isles, right? Isles, coast, dry land, spot, island, right? Okay, so we have borders the sea. Let's go back here. We have also, so that means that the Amorites, the Canaanites, and put in Mitzrayim, or some the Hittites as well, if they were considered to be along the coast as well, right? Maybe not more so the Amorites, but we know the Philistines are, but they don't call them isles. You know what's special about Japheth? This section right here. The maps I didn't get, oops, I apologize. They don't show these isles here. You see, these different specks, these islands, these coastal areas. So the thing that's special about Japheth, yeah, you have Europe and whatnot, but it's a lot of islands. So it's like the nation that dwells in islands, right? Or the island nation, right? So the isles, so the isles of the Gentiles, but the isles of the nations, because we see right here that Gentiles is H 1471. But you see here it's translated as nations, right? So it's this 1471 can read by these were the isles of the nations, but you have nations here too. So is it isles of the Gentiles? But let's take a look at let's look at if there are any more Gentiles, right? Or just nations. Are there any other places that you'll see nations? You'll see the same word. So it says, these are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, in their nations, right? 1471, right? So 1471, nations, again, translated as nations. Shem, nations, 1471, divided. So now I don't, I know the law first mentioned when it comes to this word Gentile itself. I don't disagree with people. I just look at it just a little. I just want to look at it a little bit differently because those particular nations of Japheth have islands, you know. So that's one thing I wanted to put out. I'm not going to say it's yay or nay, but I understand where people are coming from. Let's go to the next topic. Nimrod, mighty man before Yah, the mighty man before Yah, right? So I told you on purpose that I was going to skip Nimrod because I wanted to go right back to him, right? Because Nimrod's a bad dude. He's a very bad dude. So let's read about Nimrod. It says, and Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yah, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yah, and the beginning of his kingdom. So the first question I had, right, when I read this is like, what does this mean? What does it mean that he's a mighty hunter? What does it mean? So let's look at the Strong's for mighty, right? The Strong's for mighty is Gibor, right? Powerful, a warrior, a tyrant, champion, chief, giant, right? So a mighty man, mighty valiant man, right? So that's mighty. Let's do hunter, right? H 6718, right? The chase, game, lunch, right? Food, hunter. It's the word that's also used for venison. You know how Yitzhak loved that venison, right? And victuals, right? So wherefore it is said, even Nimrod, the mighty hunter, before Yah, right? So when I think about Nimrod, right? When I read this, I'm like, is Yah? Who says that he's a mighty hunter? Who is saying that he's a mighty hunter, a mighty one before Yah, a mighty warrior before Yah? Is it Yah that's acknowledging him? Or is it the other way around? Like, because we know that if you read other scriptures, you'll read and say that Moshe stood before Yah. You'll read about other people did things or standing before others or being before others, right? So it's like, what does this mean? Now, I went through endless scriptures to try to figure out or try to break down exactly like what is this getting at, right? When I look into it, it's like it's the other way around. It's like this is a person that is standing in opposition to Yah. He's standing against Yah, right? Maybe lifting his nose up to Yah, right? And as he's prevailing, right? So let's read a little bit more on Nimrod. It says, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh, it says, in the land of Shinar, out of the land went forth Asher and builded Nineveh. So Nimrod was the one they know that built Nineveh and the city of Rehoboth and Calah, right? And it says, and risen between Nineveh and Calah, the same is a great city. So we read that Nimrod is one of the mighty ones that got the people together. Nimrod was the first ruler. I would say that Nimrod is the first emperor. He was the first emperor, right? He has influence over the people. I didn't want to go too far over the Tower of Babel, but that was because of him as well. But I just want you to paint the picture. Just wanted to paint the picture on what we're getting from the scripts as of right now, right? When you see, because you don't read about anybody else like that mentioning cities, and he built many. So he was a very powerful, influential man. Let's want to look at a map real quick, and then we're going to go further into it. I just want to look at a couple of these locations. So you see Nineveh, Calah, Akkad, Erech, Babylon. You see, these are just some of the notable cities that Nimrod built, right? He was a mighty man getting people unified. But I had to get a little bit more, right? And some people will try to mention, the book of Yasher and the stories that connects. We ain't gonna mention that. I didn't want to go into that. I'm just gonna leave it out altogether. But I think I want to trust in somebody that's a little bit more trustworthy. Let's take a look at Josephus, right? Now, in here in Josephus, the iniquities, the iniquities, man. Antiquities of the Jews, 1, 4, and I'm just gonna do 1 through 2 and probably just the top of three, right? It says, now the sons of Noah were three: Shem, Japheth, Ham, born 100 born 100 years before the deluge. These first of all descendants from the mountains into the plains and fixed their habitations there, and persuaded others who were greatly afraid of the lower grounds on account of the floods, and so were very loth to come down from the higher places to venture to follow their examples, right? Now the plain in which they first dwelt was called Shinar. Elohim also commanded them to send colonies abroad for the thorough peopling of the earth, that they might not raise sedition among themselves, but might cultivate a great part of the earth and enjoy its fruits after a plentiful manner. But they were ill instructed that they did not obey Elohim. It sounds very, very similar, right? This sounded like if you know of Joshua taking Israel into the land and when they go into the land, they had to drive out the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land. But or if you remember Caleb and Joshua when they went to spy out the land. And they come back, with that big huge bushel of grapes and reported the plentifulness. The people were afraid to go up in the land. it's just amazing how we are not so far, like how the idea or the how our people are so similar to our descendants. You know, the same mindsets and ideas happen again and again and again. You see, the father changes not. I just wanted just to point this out. Now, the people were what they were afraid of is they was afraid of the flood. They was afraid to go down because of the flood. But so they was afraid to venture out. Now we know that Abba Yah made a covenant and made a sign, the rainbow, to let them know, to show like, look, I'm not going to send the flood again. But we know how our people are: lack of faith, or lack of faith. Well, yeah, lack of faith, or just pure disobedience or rebelliousness. But in this situation, it's pure good fear. So you see, they had, because of the flood, they had a fear of Yah. It's like, is it a fear of Yah or is it just a fear of the flood? But we know that when people, as they continue to grow and as they stack up on each other, we tend to get a little crazy. Violence and everything ensues, the whole nine, right? But I just wanted to point out the fact that it was the same situation that is like, hey, go out into the land and reap the benefits of the land, grow, be fruitful, and multiply as Yah commanded them, right? So it says, go forth, which reason they fell into calamities and were made sensible experience of what sin they had been guilty. For when they flourished with a numerous youth, Elohim admonished them again, send out colonies, but they, imagining the prosperity they enjoyed was not derived from the favor of Elohim, but supposing that their own power was was the proper cause of plentiful conditions they were in, did not obey him. You see, so over time they started to believe that their prospering was not due to Yah, but from their own hands and by their own means. And it was somebody that spearheaded that. It says, nay, they added in their disobedience to the divine will of the suspicion that they were therefore ordered to send out separate colonies, that being divided asunder, they might be more easily or be oppressed, right? Now, it was Nimrod, this is where Nimrod comes into the story, who excited them to such an affront and contempt of Elohim. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man and great strength of hand. He persuaded them not to ascribe to Yah Elohim, as if it was through his means they were happy, but to believe that it was their own courage which procured that happiness. He also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way, turning men from the fear of Yah. So he was purposefully working extremely hard to turn people and to make them rebel against Yah. He turned it to tyranny so that people would more so fear him instead of fearing Yah. It sounds definitely like somebody that we know coming from Mitzrayim, talking about Pharaoh, right? He understood that the people at that time had a strong fear of Yah, but he wanted to break that at all costs. He says, but to bring them into, so he says, turning men from the fear of Elohim, but to bring them into the constant dependence upon his power, right? He also said he would be revenged or avenged of Elohim if he should have a mind to drown the world again, for he would build a tower. So Nimrod is like pumping his chest out, like, I'm a mighty man. I took all these great nations. I'm a mighty warrior. And you know what? He probably pointing his finger up to Yah, like, man, if man, I'm gonna have revenge, or I'm gonna be avenged, or if Yah, like, he wants to battle with Yah. He wants to battle with Yah. He's gonna send a flood. Man, we're gonna beat that flood. If Yah trust in me, we can defeat. We don't have to fear Yah. We don't have to fear Yah. You see, there's always that one person that's speaking like the serpent. You shall not surely die. After Yah, the creator of life, told you that you would die. There's always somebody that is preaching rebelliousness. Even in this nation, when people try to say, they love to take the scripture and try to say, we know you are gods, but they don't mention the part of which who make you or what you got to do to be. It's just inside of you. You don't have to, your power is inside of you. What does that even mean? So there's always instruction or some type of leader or some type of person that think that if we come together, that we can conquer all things, that we could prevail over all things. And that's just foolishness. It's like a person, right? It's like a person that says, you ever fought somebody? If for those of you who are fighters, right? That grew up a little rough like myself, and it's like you get in a fight with somebody and you dog them, right? Like I had a friend of mine that I think he broke a spoke on my bike, and I was so mad. And we had the same bus stop, and he lived right next door, almost right next door to me. But we had to stop at the same bus stop. I would see him every day, and I would fight him every day. I was relentless. I think it was like 5 days straight. It was on site. When I saw him, I'm laying hands on him because I was mad, right? Because of that, you know, I was beating them down. After you beat someone down, right? They always turn around and be like, when you be like, I had enough, like I'm done. Then they turn around and they want to puff their chest out and be like, yeah, or I was going to get you next time or something silly like that, right? After you've already shown, your power, after y'all already showed his power through the flood, it's like now they want to be like he already put his bow down. Now they want to be like, oh, oh yeah, we're mighty against him. We're going to stop him. We're going to prevail against him, and that's not so. That's not so. That's not true. People always do foolish stuff like this, right? And Nimrod was people would wanted to trust him because people would want to believe that. People always want to rebel and they don't want to submit, right? Continuing in this situation, so he decided that for that he would build a tower too high for the waters to be able to reach, and that he would avenge himself on Elohim for destroying their forefathers. So, because Yah caused the flood and destroyed his forefathers, he wants to have revenge on Yah. You're right. So now the multitude were very ready to follow the determination of Nimrod and to esteem it as peace and cowardice, to submit, and they saw it as cowardness to submit to Elohim, and they built a tower, right? So somebody as mighty, when you read that Nimrod was a mighty warrior or a mighty one, before Yah, he wasn't mighty and standing with Yah. He was mighty and standing against Yah. And that's the point that I wanted to bring out when it comes to Nimrod. All right. All right. Keith, I am not from Waldorf. Stop playing with me. I'm from the South Side. Stop playing with me, man. Stop playing with my emotions, Kiefer. You're just disrespectful.
One of the ways that the Most High has blessed me this year is by bringing like-minded individuals into my life that I can pray, read, and fast with. I'm super grateful for all of them. Shout out to FOTW.